have here the 2018 Global Teacher with us in our venue this morning. Absolutely fantastic, Andrea, to have you here, and I'll introduce her a little bit later on. And this weekend, Sunday evening, in fact, that youngster on the right-hand side there was awarded the 2019 Global Teacher Prize. Peter Tabichi from Kenya. And I will endeavor to share videos of a few of the finalists and Peter of the work that they do, so that we as teachers can understand what is being done across the globe to uplift and to educate the young people of this planet and to uplift them for the future. And many of the teachers that win these prizes work under difficult to teach circumstances. Many of our teachers work under difficult to teach circumstances. On the left there is Vikas Pota, he's now the Executive Director of the Waki Foundation, or the Managing Director of the Waki Foundation, who has done tremendous work in putting these things together. We have our teacher prizes, and we have had, in fact, top 50 people. Last year in this audience sits Wendy Horn, one of the top 50 teachers in the Global Teacher Prize in 2018 when Andrea won. And we will continue to identify the teachers that we can hold up, representing all the teachers in this world. I wanted to just share with you our pride in Peter Tabichi in this conference this morning. So this is the voice of a young person. And I said last night at the event, the cocktail reception last night, that in conferences such as these, there's one group of voices that we don't hear. And that's the voice of the students, the voice of the learners. And we will in future find a way to identify learners who are able to contribute also in a particular way, not just in showcasing gumboots and music, etc., but that can actually join in the conversation, because I believe we have to listen. And in fact, last year, Wada and I had a conversation about the voices of people, and we introduced a provincial learner forum so that we can hear the voices of young people and listen to what they say. They often do not necessarily know their future as we don't, but they know how they would like to see things differently, and it's worth listening to those. This young lady, Bana Alabed, Syrian child, caught up in the war in Syria, 9 years old, spoke on the global stage this weekend, and she said, I want to be a teacher because teachers are number one in our lives. Without them, the world will be nothing. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that every one of you sitting here today and every teacher in the Western Cape understands that this is why you want to be a teacher. No other reason counts. This is why we want to teach. And this we hear from a 9-year-old kid. Shouldn't we be listening to what they say and reflecting and learning from that space? So I need to press this twice, it seems to me, to get going. All of you by this time know what the vision of this department is, and the fact that it's based on our value system, and all that we're doing to entrench values as a central pillar on transforming our education system. But we have to look at the future. And this department started 2 years ago at the Broad Management and Leadership Strategy, speaking about conversations of the future. It's culminated in this conference with a wider audience engaging on the things that we need to look at and think about in the future. That is the future. In fact, it's not even the future, it's almost the present, of the young people that are in our care. And whilst we are all old, some of you a little less old, but whilst we are certainly older than the kids we teach, we have to think about what their needs are and what their future is. Now, there's a lot that we can brag about. Last year we were awarded a silver award for the best run provincial department of all provincial departments, not education departments in the country. And that is something that was a significant award that we need to consider how come and why, and it also is a signal that we're doing something's right. We have to do a hell of a lot more. I spoke about Wendy Horn just now, top 50 finalist in the 2018 Global Teacher Award. That it's a teacher from our midst. It's one representing the hundreds who are excellent, who are dedicated, and who are really working hard. We're the only education department that has, since democracy, received a clean audit in this country. The only education department in this country. And we're pretty chuffed by the fact that we have now received a clean audit for 4 years in a row. It has not been done. It is, if you like, leading the pack. In fact, no other education department yet has a clean audit. But it places a responsibility on us so that we don't just pursue clean audits and good administration and good financial management, but that we pursue equally, if not more so, the education delivery that is needed for the development of kids in our country. I mention these things to you because I do think that on reflection, we also have to look at the things that we ought to be proud of as a Western Cape Education Department. Here are a number of it. We're highest performance in the SACMEC testing results, our regional tests, standardized external tests. Our NEC and maths and physical science scores are tops and great. And we've got the best retention in this country. Despite that, we find ourselves in the top performance at the end of school engagement. That doesn't come by chance. That comes through hard work and a lot of effort from the teachers. The achievements that this department achieves because of the quality of its teaching core in this country. We are building really state-of-the-art schools. The Minister says we mustn't advocate this too much because then more and more people want to come into these state-of-the-art schools that we're building. But the fact of the matter is we're building beautiful schools. Schools that are different, schools that are already future-oriented. We're rolling out e-learning at pace. And as you know, we're a number of years down the line with the EdTech or the digital utilization of improving education. We have dedicated teachers. I am humbled week in and week out. Every holiday I'm humbled by the commitment of the teachers of this province as they stream to in-service training and professional development engagements. Absolutely humbled and fantastic. And we don't say it enough. And I've asked my ExCo and myself to try to get to as many of these events possible just to say thank you to guys that gave up on Saturday morning or a weekend or a holiday or a Friday afternoon to attend these sessions. Great dedicated teachers. And we have many schools that are choosing to succeed rather than to sit in the despondency of the contextual realities. These are schools such as this, Levana Primary School, living and operating and working in a terrible gang-infested area. But these are schools, Masibambisani, for example, there are many, Sivamandla, that choose to rise above the rest. I want all our schools to have that commitment and that engagement. We have learners, countless numbers that defy the odds. This young man, Kamagozo from Swano Secondary School, Browns Farm, top performing student in physical science in the country. He had 300 out of 300 for 2 subjects, 98% for a third. And he was 5th in this province, coming from a poor environment, showing that there is nothing wrong with the ability of our kids. A lot with their attitude and with their approach and with their mindset. And this is why we have to pursue a growth mindset program so that our kids can understand that there is hope in the future and they can achieve because they have the ability to do so. And so, in wrapping up this part of the engagement, as a department, we think we're doing okay, and I hope you do too. I hope you also think we're doing okay. I hope that you are also proud in being part of what we're doing. Some say we're the best education in the department in the country. You've heard me often say that that's cool, and I appreciate that, but I don't want to be the best education department in the country. I don't want to measure us against other education departments in the country. In fact, I don't really want to measure ourselves against the world. I want to measure ourselves against our own standards. The things we decide in conversations such as this that we ought to be doing, that we have to do, and then we must measure ourselves and ensure that we get there. We've got a lot to be grateful for, not the least of which is a fantastic teaching corps. But we want to move from being a fair or even a good education department to become a great education department. That requires every single role player from all walks of life to ensure that we get there. That's not an SG, it's not an EXCO, it's not a minister's endeavor. It is our endeavor to become a great education department and not to fly a flag and say we're great, to be able to deliver the best education we can, a quality education for every child, in every classroom, in every school in our province. That's our vision, that's our mission, and that's what we have to do. Despite these great achievements, there's the reality of inequality that persists. Now, we are, as most of you know, and Andrea doesn't yet, we divide our schools into 5 quintiles. They are not great, they're not really appropriate. The 5th quintile is the least poor. Some call it the richest, but there are many, many poor schools in the quintile 5. Quintile 1 is the poorest. 1, 2, and 3 are almost equally poor. And over many years, we've achieved the progress in our so-called Litnam strategy up to about 2012 or so, where we've brought quintile 1, 2, and 3 up in parity to quintile 4. And if you take a look at the slide, you'll see that from 2009 to 2018, each of these categories have improved. And the poorest of these categories, 1, 2, and 3, have improved the most. And that's commendable. That we have to celebrate. That we have to share. We don't say this enough. That is really remarkable. It's one of the things that the McKinsey report of 2010 recognized us for in the global report, where they looked at 20 global education systems that were performing and improving the education outcomes. Western Cape was one of those 20 global systems. However, despite that, that inequality gap is still with us. And we can't rest, because there are still many learners who are not receiving a quality education in every classroom, in every period of their school life. We have to turn that around. And so we must have different education conversations for the future. We can't continue with the education that we're giving at the moment and think it's great. We have to start the necessary deep conversations, fights if you like, with DBE about an overfull curriculum. We have to speak about the skills that are required. We've got to talk and experiment ourselves within the scope that I have to permit that we experiment with curriculum and with education delivery, and most importantly with approaches that are different, even whilst we have the same national curriculum that we pursue. These conversations, therefore, that you're participating in these 2 days are fundamental to the direction that this department takes. We started off 2 or 3 years ago with starting with a conversation that is making us think, making our learners think. And so we introduced the mantra, enter to learn and leave to serve. This mantra is to say to kids, guys, that's why you go to school. You go to school to learn, for no other reason. Not for sex behind the tuck shop, not to buy pot, not to smoke on the school grounds, not to have fights, not even for the food that more than 600,000 of our kids get every day. But that they must go to school to learn something in every lesson, in every classroom. I'm concerned about the increase of drug usage and abuse in our schools. And I think we should be taking a far harder line. The Minister doesn't know this yet, but we're taking a very hard line on any kind of violence, particularly violence and threat against teachers. I will not tolerate that. And that she knows. Yes, indeed, the Minister knows that. But what she doesn't know yet is that I'm intending to take a harder line against drug abuse. I'm starting conversations about saying that kids who smoke or bring drugs to school must exit the school system. That's harsh. It's harsh, but it is at the root of a huge amount of evil in our schools. We'll find ways of doing that. Whilst they have school-going age, we'll find alternative places for them, etc. But there has to be consequence. And we have to signal a stance against it, because it's getting out of hand and it's inappropriate. So the mantras are there. And some schools, and in fact many schools, have really bought into this. This is an example of a school that has what I think is a fantastic and unique way of doing it. There's an archway, and when the kids start school on their first day, they enter through that arch and ring the bell as they enter. And the intention is when they leave school at the end of their school career, They ring the bell again in the ceremony as they exit that school to serve their communities. Isn't that a fantastic interpretation and event? And many, many, many of these things are coming to the fore as people speak about what it is that we're trying to do. So this vision that we're pursuing, and that we agree we have a long way to go because we're not there yet. This vision, if we want to move our system, we don't just move it in only little pockets. Systemic transformation is about moving the system, which means everyone has to buy in. Everyone has to agree. Everyone has to move. Everyone has to have the conversations. And everyone in our system must participate in whatever way possible in moving the space. Not just teachers, not just learners, also parents, also communities, also NGOs. And there are great examples where this is starting to happen. So our system in moving towards that vision is driven by our values. And we started that as a department by looking at our values internally because we wish to have credibility when we go to our schools and say, guys, we need to re-energize values education in our schools because our kids are not getting it home, they're not getting it in society. Education has to play that role. And so our Transform to Perform strategy, which is in parallel to our systemic transformation process through EdTech or through e-learning, whilst we work with the curriculum content and the curriculum foci, is absolutely fundamental to changing the way we look at and think and feel about education. Just one example at the start of this, I'm not going to speak much about this, but we ran a trial with a growth mindset program for learners in 20 schools the year before last, in the first rollout of this growth mindset for learners. And with just 3 45-minute exposure sessions, it's an international program that we present with videos and task sheets for 3 45-minute exposures in the course of the year. The math score in grade 9 of those 20 schools on average went up by 4.6 percentage points. That's not changing the maths teaching at all. That is because kids are thinking differently about their future, and so they work a little harder, they think a bit more about their work. We will do this systemically, and we shall see the impact of this within the next 5 years. So the basis and the tenet of achieving that vision is based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is the teacher, absolutely fundamental part to this engagement. And so whilst we had enter to learn and leave to serve for the mindset of learners, for our teachers and our officials, we say, our job is to enter to serve. That's why we became teachers. And to be relevant, we have to continue to learn. Enter to serve and continue to learn. And we will work at the attitude and the approach of our teachers. The central pillar is the pillar of values. Pillar where we want to have values-driven learning and a values program in all our schools. And the third one is the learner. And we've coined that phrase already. Interestingly, someone pointed out to me earlier that, and this was not planned so, but if you read the yellow words from left to right, it reads, the teacher values the learner. And I think it is true that many of our teachers have lost this understanding. It's not they're bad people, they're bad teachers, but they're so caught up in the contextual reality of their lives that they're despondent. And I've never seen a despondent teacher that can inspire a child. And so we have to get the mindset of our teachers right. If we go into any staff room, we hear the moans and the groans, the lot of work, the lousy discipline, the terribles. We've got to change that so the teachers see the positive, the future of the kids. Value the teacher, values the learner. And so we started that out with the teacher through a series of foci, if you like, or themes. And the first year, we coined the theme, the year of the teacher, because teachers are our most valuable resource. Education is all about the learner, and it's all about learning. But we spend 80% of our budget on teachers, and therefore teachers are our most valuable resource. And we have to get respect back for our teachers. Sunny Varkey, based on research, said over the weekend that where there is respect for teachers, there is improvement in learner outcomes. There's a direct correlation in education systems where community, society, parents respect teachers, directly correlates with learner performance. You and I that are teachers will understand why that is so. If teachers are not respected, what is the attitude of parents? What is the attitude of society to our teachers? And kids pick it up. And so it's one of the most fundamental aspects in my view. We've got to get people, society, to respect teachers, and teachers have to be respect-worthy in whatever they do, knowledge, preparation, etc. So the advantage of my hour and a half that I have here is that this time is not working, so that means I've got carte blanche. The second pillar is the pillar of values. And so 2018, we coined the theme, 2018, the year of values-driven learning. And as you know, we've asked every school to adopt 12 values a year, 1 value a month, live it, speak it, bring it intrinsically into everything that happens in the school. Values-driven learning in values-driven organizations. Central pillar to transforming what we're doing in education. And the third one, the learner, 2019, the year of the learner. Not about learner rights, but it's putting into the place again where learner understands that education is about learning, and everything we do is related to that. So if we just reflect for a moment again on that inequality gap, the question, of course, is, so what do we do about it? And we believe that there are ways to leapfrog the inequality that exists. This is a new phraseology. It's a discourse that's happening in the global space. And one of those things is that inequality cannot persist. We've got to narrow that gap. And one of the most important aspects of that, we believe, is the e-learning strategy. Because we all know that the affluent have digital resources in the home. They've got Wi-Fi, they've got devices, 2, 3, every kid's got 2, 3 devices. They get it from a young age, whilst the poor does not. Hence, the whole e-learning strategy, creating broadband for all schools, free Wi-Fi hotspots, Wi-Fi lands in more than a third of our schools already, are fundamental. And now, the key ingredient is the teacher in embracing technology to enhance both teaching and learning. And the second parallel transformational aspect is the transform to perform strategy. That's not costing anything, that's not focused on content, that's focusing on attitude and mindset. And if we get that right across the system, these two systemic transformations will elevate our learning, start chipping away at the inequality gap, and move closer to achieving our vision of quality education for all. And so, just very briefly, I'm not going to go through all of these. These are the successes that we've already done in delivering 1,245 schools with WAN, 412 with LAN, Wi-Fi blankets in the schools, 28,000 tablets, 28,000 PCs, 7,500 smart classrooms already. And we will continue with LAN rollout, and we will continue with smart classroom rollout, and we will continue and increase teacher participation, training, and teachers talking to teachers about what they do in the classrooms in the context of digital teaching. Digital learning will follow within that ambit as well. And so all our schools are touched by this. All our schools are touched. Few that are difficult to get to will be reached shortly. Few model schools, enhanced schools, and universal schools. And our transform to perform strategy, in summary, is focusing on the teacher as the one pillar, the values as the central pillar, and the learner as the third. And what we will do is 4 programs in this space over the next 5 years, and it's started already. One is we have to get our leadership developed and understood at all levels. We have to get principals standing tall. Our principals have to take the responsibility of leadership in their schools, understanding that it's educational leadership, instructional leadership, organizational leadership that has to happen. We need our principals to be principles of excellence. But leadership at all levels in our system will therefore receive attention. Secondly, the values in education pillar, all schools will be touched by that. It's fundamental and central to what we're doing. The growth mindset is the program for learners, and we will reach every one of our 1.1 million learners in this province within the next 5 years with the rollout of a growth mindset program. The only problem is that we can do 150 in this year. And that means that there's some schools that are going to demand that we get there when they see the impact that it's starting to have in schools. And unfortunately, there's going to be some guys that are only going to receive it in the 5th year. But there are some things that schools can do in the interim until we roll out the programs in those spaces. And all teachers will be touched with a professional mindset training program and exposed to such a program. And so, in wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, we have to prepare our learners for the 21st century. These are things that our learners ask, is this what we're doing? Are we giving them the skills that they need? Are they being prepared for the values? Are they understanding what is happening? Will they be ready for a job market? Are we giving our kids these things in our education system in this province? These are the reflections that we are speaking about at this conference and will be ongoing conversations. Many people disagree on what the skills of the future are, what the 21st century skills are. But there's fair kind of common agreement or alignment with wherever people speak, some of these skills come up in the conversation. Critical thinking and problem solving. Collaboration, leading by influence. Agility and adaptability. Initiative and entrepreneurship. Good oral and written communication skills. And curiosity and imagination. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. He didn't say knowledge isn't important. He said imagination is more important than knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that our kids come to school with an innate curiosity and an innate ability for digital devices, for example. They've got an innate ability, particularly curiosity. I'm concerned that by the end of our primary school system in this country, we have killed the curiosity of kids. And a lot of that has got to do that we're not having the humanities discourses. We're not having the arts discourses, Andrea. And we have to start having those aspects that also fosters creativity instead of only a science and maths particular focus, which is important, but not all important for every child. So we've got to think about the skills that we have to do. I've been asked to head up a national task team that will give input in terms of the competency and skills for a changing world. A very important conversation and discussion. And looking at the global discourse, these conversations are happening elsewhere as well. If we talk about artificial intelligence and virtual reality, lots of things that we have to do, that things differently about things. So we will continue with the focus areas that we had because they're not wrong. But we will expand that to have a curriculum that, in fact, addresses the things that we've almost allowed to fall off the table. On Sunday evening, the Global Teacher Prize, Andrew Lloyd Webber made a passionate plea that we bring back music because in education systems, music and arts have fallen off the table. He's made a passionate plea that we start bringing these things back into education. So we'll continue with language and mathematics because they're important foundational skills and learning opportunities. We must improve technical and skills education and bring a greater balance and respect for it. And so we're almost at the point of saying that every new school we will build from now on will be a technical school or a school of skills. Yeah. You have to make it more accessible for kids. And you can't just have 22 or 25 technical schools across this entire province, which is currently the case. We will refocus on arts education. We've got such artistic talent in this province. If you think of the youngsters of Mitchell Plain, if you think of the youngsters of Khayelitsha, it's bred in their bones. Yet we don't celebrate it. We don't utilize it for learning. There's a young teacher in Kenya who was one of the top 10 in the year before last, who uses his teaching and upliftment of the entire society. He's a dance teacher. He teaches ballet in a school in Kenya. We miss the point, and therefore arts education is quite critical. We have to bring back a greater focus on agricultural subjects. We are a rural province. Some people prefer to think we aren't, but we are. We deliver almost 70% of the export of agricultural produce from this country. This province delivers. Coding, Peter Beets, who is not here today, speaks about computational skills. And we will start that from a young age. And then we talk about, therefore, in summary, changing STEM to STEAM to STEAMAC, and I'll explain that in a minute. And the transform to perform is the underpinning one. And these are our key foci for the next number of years in this province. Not neglecting anything else, but the key focus. And so we all know STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're going to STEAM back because we're including in that science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, agriculture, and coding. That will be the phraseology that you'll hear in the next while. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we must make learning fun again. Kids must want to come to school. Kids must want to come into our classrooms. Why would a kid want to come into a classroom if there's a teacher that is giving a boring talk with not a single indication of what is being taught in the classroom, on the walls, or on the board? Why would a kid want to come to school? We've got to draw them into our classrooms like moths to a light. And for that, we've got to make learning fun, particularly in the primary schools. Creative, project work, exciting, questioning skills. Our teachers have lost the art of teaching through questioning. We have to focus, therefore, in conversations on how we bring back the art of the teacher, and make learning fun. And so, these are the things that we have to do in conclusion. We have to get values back in our school and eventually into our society. We have to get all learners to have a positive growth mindset and to go to school wanting to learn. We have to get all our teachers to love and care for children that they teach, that are in their care. To have a positive attitude and a mindset, believing in our children and believing in their future. That's what teachers have to do. And we have to get the leadership at all levels in education to be positive, ethical, inspiring leadership, building education for the future. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what Transform to Perform is all about. So let our conversations be education conversations. That's exactly why we're here. That's why we have the theme of these 2 days. These 2 days is not an endpoint. These 2 days is an enabler that starts the conversations in this province at a wider scale than what we've done just through our management conversations. Let's look at the future, but let us start acting now and not talk for another 10 years about the issues. Braden Bent, a 10-year-old presenter, flogger, blogger, amazing guy, hosted the opening session with 3,500 people with a world stage looking at him. Braden Bent said, "I'm here to remind you it's my world too. Once this stage is packed away, once this conference is over, my generation will be left behind to deal with the mess. So let's try harder." That is my appeal to you and to me. Let us try harder. Thank you very much. You're supposed to applaud long.